Yo, what's going on YouTube? Good Agree, I'm back here with another video, and at long last, not only have we hit level 100, but we've pretty much solidified our build to the point where I'm comfortable releasing this here in-game build guide. Not only is this an in-game build guide, but all of the information that I'm going to discuss within this video will apply to early and mid-game, and I will be letting you guys know the stats, aspects, and other skills / Paragon points that you're going to be wanting to attribute and acquire throughout your journey as a rogue. I have to say, this build that I'm about to show you is, in my opinion, the most fun build and the best build for the rogue class in Diablo 4. It does insane damage, it has insane survivability, and when it comes down to it, it's just simply fun to play. And let's dive right into the skills. Starting off with our basic, we're going to take Puncture, and this is going to give us pretty much infinite vulnerability, as well as energy regeneration. Now moving on to our bread and butter, our core, we're going to take Twisting Blades. I personally take Improved Twisting Blades in order to CC and daze enemies. A source of daze is always good as it stacks up our stacks of momentum, which is our key passive momentum. Anyways, you could take Advanced Twisting Blades. This is only good in packs though, and I personally push single target damage, so it's not really good for me. However, if you can get a pack together and get your blades to pass through multiple enemies, you can get up to 2 seconds of cooldown on any cooldowns you have active. Apart from allowing me to stack my key passive momentum, dazing enemies is essentially a form of survivability as I'm able to stun lock enemies. Speaking of survivability, right below that we have Sturdy and Siphoning Strikes. I get away with 2 out of 3 of Siphoning Strikes, however if you have that extra point, I recommend picking up the 3 out of 3. Moving on down here to our agility skills, you're going to want to pick up Shadow Step and Dash. Now Shadow Step is really good because it's a CC break. And let me tell you, there's nothing more annoying in the game than a CC for a rogue. So when it comes to that cold enchant affix or that freeze CC, Shadow Step has got you covered. All you gotta do is hit it one time and you're out of that. When it comes to Dash, Dash is just about the best movement skill in the game and a must-have for any rogue. Speccing into Discipline Dash, this is because I need any way to proc daze, as it not only allows me to again stack momentum stacks, but also allows me to knock down enemies with this passive right here, Trick Attacks. Moving on right above that, when I knock down an enemy, it allows me to do 12% increased critical strike chance against them with 3 out of 3 ranks of concussive. If you have critical strike chance covered as well as CC, you might not need trick attacks or concussive. In that case, you could distribute the points elsewhere. However, for nightmare dungeon clearing as well as stun effects against Uber Lilith, I find this helps a lot. And we can't forget a must-have for any rogue, an outright damage increase for everybody, Weapon Mastery. Now when it comes to your subterfuge skills, you have options. I personally pick up Dark Shroud and go into Subverting Dark Shroud. This is because not only is the damage reduction good, but so is the increased movement speed. However, if you don't need the damage reduction, I would recommend picking up the Ultimate Shadow Clone, as this is going to give you some increased damage. With that being said, every rogue should be picking up right here Exploit and Malice 3 out of 3, as these are again outright damage increases and are no-brainer pickups. And of course, when it comes to our imbuement skills, we're going to be picking up Poison Imbuement, going into Blended Poison Imbuement for increased critical strike damage with poison imbued skills. And right below that, if you're doing any type of poison damage, you should be picking up Deadly Venom for increased poison damage, and Debilitating Toxins for a little bit of damage reduction against poisoned enemies. On the left hand side of that, if you're using any type of imbuement skills, you're going to want to pick up Precision Imbuement for some increased critical strike chance. Moving on down here to our ultimate skills, once again, like I said, you have options. If you have damage reduction covered, you should pick up Shadow Clone. However, if you're lacking in the damage reduction and the survivability department, I recommend looking at Dark Shroud. I often find myself switching between the two, but there's a bit of a context behind it. If I'm doing high nightmare dungeons, I'm gonna need that damage reduction, so I run Dark Shroud. But if I'm doing something like pushing a boss, for example trying to get Uber Lilith done, I'm gonna run Shadow Clone, simply because I get that extra damage. Right next to Shadow Clone, however, I recommend picking up Innervation and Alchemist Fortune. Alchemist Fortune is really massive because it gives increased lucky hit chance for non-physical damage. Our poison damage is going to be non-physical damage. Moving on straight down below that, we have Adrenaline Rush as well as Haste. At one point in time, I had 3 out of 3 ranks of Haste. However, I traded those 2 ranks out for 2 ranks of Concussive. In my opinion, as long as you're covered on critical strike chance, you don't need the 2 ranks of Concussive. Same can be said for Haste. So feel free to determine that at your own discretion. Our key passive is going to be Momentum, once again as we're proccing a lot of days, and this is going to give us increased damage reduction, increased energy regeneration, and increased movement speed. This is pretty much infinitely going to be procced. That's our skills, so let's get straight into our aspects. Starting us off here is going to be our Helm with the aspect of Disobedience. This is going to give us increased armor. Our chest piece is going to be the aspect of Might. This is going to give us damage reduction whenever we use our basic skills. Our gloves are going to be the accelerating aspect. This is going to give us increased attack speed whenever we critically strike with core skills. Our pants are going to have the Umbrus aspect. This is going to give us a free Dark Shroud whenever we proc marksman skill crits. On our boots we have the Mangler's aspect. This is going to proc Daze whenever we deal direct damage to vulnerable enemies. This again is going to stack our Momentum key passive as well as knock down enemies and allow us to critically strike them more with our Trick passive and our Concussive passive. Moving on down here to our crossbow, we're going to of course have the Blade Dancer's aspect. I've experimented with the aspect of Corruption. Either or I feel like is good here, it just depends on your circumstance. Speaking of the aspect of Corruption, moving on to our amulet, we have of course the aspect of Corruption, which is going to give us increased imbuement skill potency against vulnerable enemies. Starting off with our first ring, we're going to have the aspect of Inner Calm, which is going to give us increased damage based on how long we stand still. Our second ring is going to be the Edge Master's aspect. This is going to give us increased damage based on our available primary resource. Our final 2 here, our swords. The first one being the aspect of Bursting Venoms. This is going to allow us to do infinite poison damage when we're standing in the poison pool that is procced by hitting a lucky hit, then a critical strike with poison imbued skills. Our second sword is going to be the aspect of Smiting, and this is just a filler aspect for the time being. This is going to give us increased critical strike chance against injured enemies and increased crowd control duration while we're healthy. Now since this is just a filler, if you go ahead and run something like Shadow Clone, you're going to want to run the aspect of Imitated Imbuement. This is going to allow your Shadow Clones to mimic your imbuements, which is going to give you more poison damage. Before we wrap up the aspects section, I do want to mention a few of these are just damage fillers, and the rest of them are specifically damage reduction and survivability aspects, so you can fill those how you need and with what you have. However, there are 3 main aspects that is the center of the build that you do not want to miss out on, as the build won't function properly without them. And those 3 are going to be the Blade Dancer's aspect, which makes your twisting blades circle around you. The aspect of Corruption, which is going to increase the potency of your imbuement skills. And the aspect of Bursting Venoms, which is going to drop that poison pool that allows you to do your infinite poison imbuement. Make sure that you're running these no matter what. If you're running the infinite poison imbuement, Twisting Blades build. When it comes to our gems, we're going to want to pick up emeralds for our weapons, rubies for our armor, and skulls for our jewelry. The emeralds are going to give us increased critical strike chance against vulnerable enemies. The rubies are going to give us increased maximum life. And the skulls are going to give us increased armor. When it comes to our specialization, we're going to want to without a doubt pick up Inner Sight, as when the charge is full, This is going to give us unlimited energy for 4 seconds, which is again the entire concept of the infinite poison twisting blades build, as this is going to give us infinite twisting blades, and if we proc this simultaneously with the infinite poison, this is going to give us massive burst damage. When it comes to stat rolls for your gear for the rogue, there's a few things you're looking for. And I'm going to throw up the clips from a spreadsheet that I made on screen, but I'm also going to link it down in the description so you guys can refer to that at your own discretion. In regards to your helm, you're looking for 4 ranks of poison imbuement, cooldown reduction, dexterity, maximum energy, maximum life, or total armor. In regards to your chest, you're looking for damage reduction from close or poisoned enemies, poison damage, maximum life, dexterity, and total armor. When it comes to gloves, you're looking for lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, 4 ranks of twisting blades, attack speed, and critical strike damage with imbuement skills. For your pants, you're going to want to be looking for maximum life, damage reduction from close or poisoned enemies, imbuement skill cooldown reduction, total armor, or 4 ranks of dark shroud. Your boots are going to want to have maximum speed, energy cost reduction, dodge chance, dexterity, 4 ranks of dash, or 4 ranks of shadow step. Your crossbow needs to have vulnerable damage, dexterity, critical strike damage, damage to close enemies, core skill damage, or critical damage with imbued skills. Unless you pick up a unique, your blades are going to be universal. You're going to want to be looking for vulnerable damage, dexterity, critical strike damage, damage to close enemies, critical strike damage with imbued skills, or damage over time. Now on your amulet, you've got quite a few options. Cooldown reduction, 3 ranks of imbuement skills, 3 ranks of the deadly venom passive, 3 ranks of the exploit or malice passives, energy cost reduction, damage reduction, movement speed, imbuement cooldown reduction, total armor, or dexterity. Once again, on your rings, these are going to be universal, but you've got quite a few options here. Vulnerable damage, lucky hit chance, critical strike chance or critical strike damage, damage with imbued skills, poison damage, damage to close enemies, damage over time, critical strike damage with imbued skills, or maximum health. That's going to cover it for our skills, aspects, gems, specialization, and stats. As for the Paragon boards, I'm not going to go over all of it. I'm going to mention the glyphs as well as a few rare nodes. If you want to follow along, feel free to pause the video or reference the build planner linked down in the description. Getting us started off here with our first board, we're going to grab the rare nodes Prime and Resilience for some survivability. Moving on to our first glyph here, we have Closer, which is going to give us a 10% damage reduction as well as cutthroat damage. Once again, we pick up the rare nodes Skillful and Lawless in order to grab that extra damage and that survivability through the 200 armor. Progressing here to our second board, this is going to be the Eldritch Bounty board, and we're going to go ahead and pick up the rare node Imbuer as well as the surrounding magical nodes for that extra imbued skill damage as well as the non-physical damage. And of course, we pick up our legendary node, Eldritch Bounty. This is going to give us not only increased poison resistance, but increased poison damage. Right above that, we have Ready Supply. We're going to pick that up for the extra non-physical damage, as well as the imbuement skill cooldown reduction. Our second glyph right up here is going to be the Tracker glyph. This is going to give us increased damage to poison enemies, as well as a 33% increase on the length that poison damage effects last. Directly above that, we grab the Potent Rare node and the surrounding magic nodes in order to get that extra imbued skill damage. Here, we pick up Dosage simply to get at the intelligence that's right above it. Apart from that, it gives us 8% potion healing and 10 dex, which I can't complain about. To the right of our second board is going to be the Exploit Weakness board. Within this board, we're going to pick up the rare node Artifice for that extra vulnerable damage. The glyph for this board is going to be Combat. This is going to give us increased critical strike damage with core skills and are going to restore 12% of said skill's energy cost when they critically strike. Right below that, we pick up our second Dosage node. Once again, simply to get at the intelligence. And onto our fourth board here, no witnesses, we're going to pick up the knowledge node and the surrounding magical nodes for that increased damage. As you can see, the glyph for this board is going to be turf. This is going to give us increased damage to close enemies, as well as a 10% damage reduction against close enemies. Just above that, we pick up the training rare node and the surrounding magical nodes, not only for the strength, but for the survivability. On our right, we have the cunning stratagem board. We're going to pick up the Lawless Rare node and the surrounding magical nodes. Our glyph for this board is going to be Bane. This is going to give us increased poison damage as well as the 10% chance to double our poison damage. To the right of that, we have the Rare node Finisher and surrounding magical nodes that give us increased core skill damage. Rounding out our Paragon tree with our 6th board here, we have Deadly Ambush. We're going to be picking up the Exploit glyph here, which is going to give us vulnerable damage, as well as an extra way to proc said vulnerable damage. And that'll just about do it for our Paragon board. Like I said, if you missed anything, feel free to rewind the video and pause at your own discretion, or check out the description. I not only have a spreadsheet of all the stats that I listed in my description of the stats that you're going to need, but I'll also have the entire link to the build planner that I made on Maxroll. With all that information being laid out in front of you, I hope that helps you with your build and bestows upon you a little bit of the information and knowledge that I've been able to acquire whilst playing Diablo. I'm going to end it off here on some final thoughts, as well as my plans going forward, not only for the duration of my Eternal Realm playthrough, but also for Season 1. Thus far, I've played what I can only estimate to be hundreds of hours of Diablo 4 between the betas as well as the full release of the game. And the enjoyment and challenge that the rogue class has brought to me has been absolutely, bar none, equal to no other class and no other game. I am truly, wholeheartedly loving and invested in Diablo 4 and will continue to not only play it, but cover it on my channel and provide content for it for the foreseeable future. My main goal has always been and will continue to be striving in order to provide the advice that those seek from the information that I've learned in this journey that we call life. When it comes to the Eternal Realm specifically, I'm going to be gear grinding a little bit more, not only specifically to get the unique that I need for Uber Lilith, but just to get the god rolls of the stats that I have, as well as the stats that I'm specifically looking for. Apart from that, I'll continue to push the limits of what my build's capable of, hopefully being able to complete Uber Lilith and pushing higher Nightmare Dungeon tiers. Once Season 1 comes out, I will be switching over to the Seasonal Realm, progressing a Seasonal Rogue, and hopefully achieving the goals that I will have set for myself for this season, but also the goals that I have in mind for the content that I'm putting out on my channel. Most of the guidelines that I've set here are subjective and depend upon what you want to get out of the game and how you want to build your class. However, hopefully they will be just that and provide a rough estimate as to what you need for your rogue in order to tip the scales on achieving a godlike build. Quick reminder, don't forget to check the description as I always add in any information I might forget within the video, and specifically I'm adding in the links to the spreadsheet that I mentioned in the video, as well as my D4 max roll build guide. As always, if you want to stay updated with my build and my content, don't forget to subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and drop any questions or feedback you might have down in the comment section. Enjoy the rest of this Tier 63 Blind Burrows Nightmare Dungeon showcase, and thanks for watching. Peace out.